is it that everybody's just so uncomfortable with death? Because in our culture, unfortunately, aging, elders, sickness, like even the way sickness is dealt with, right? It's just so different in other parts of the world. What do you think the reason is? Welcome to Spiritually Hungry. Julie, we're so grateful for you to join us today. Your work in hospice care and discussion about death, I think, will be very enlightening, actually, and illuminating for our listeners. And I'm really personally excited to have this conversation with you today. So thank you for coming.
Great. Thank you. I'm excited.
I'm very excited. Michael's lost both of his parents. His mother died 5 years ago now, and my father 4 years ago, and my grandmother a year ago. And we often speak about death with our listeners, and I certainly went through a period after my father died. I guess it was my way of dealing with it, and I wasn't really aware of it, but it's just all I wanted to talk about was death, because I think it's such an important conversation that so many people are uncomfortable with. And one of my kids was like, Mom, I think it's a bit much now, because it was making people a little uncomfortable, but I was basically like, we have 4,000 weeks in a life, and what are you going to do with it? And death is a great motivator, I think, for how to live a good life, ultimately. So anyway, let's jump into it. I want to talk about your journey first. You've described leaving the ICU for hospice work. I think, will you tell us how long you were in the ICU first, and that it was life-changing and sacred. So what was the moment that you had a realization that you wanted to go from work in the ICU to hospice care?
I don't think there was one moment. It was a lot of little moments over time. It took me a long time to leave what was normal to me. Like, even though the ICU it felt like killing me inside, I would leave work being like, this is not what I signed up for. Something about this is not sitting right with me. It still took me many years to finally take the plunge and move to a different area of nursing. Because in nursing, it's so easy to be like, okay, I don't really like this, but it's what I know. So it almost feels safer to be there. But there was one patient in particular that I was with for 6 months. They were in the ICU for 6 months, mostly sedated, mostly on a bunch of medications and machines to keep them alive. But I still felt very close to them and their family. And it was the first patient I really spoke up for, not for them to live, but for us to be honest about what was happening to them, which was they are dying. They are dead, and we are keeping them alive, and for what? And if we really told the family what we thought, which was this person likely was not going to live and get out of the ICU, what would they do? I felt like we owed that to them.
How did they take that? How did they receive that?
Well, I didn't say that at first because I was too afraid. It was months. This person was there for months. And then finally one day during rounds, I remember no one raises their hands, but I was nervous and I raised my hand and they were like, yes. And I said, I think we should have a family meeting to talk about what's really happening here. And I think I said something general and long-term goals, something like that. And everyone knew what I was talking about, and I think including the family. And everyone just said, yes, 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 yes. And next thing I knew, we were having a family meeting that day on my shift. And by the end of my shift, they had turned off all the machines and the patient died. And although I got in my car that night and cried, I remember crying because I felt like I spoke up, and now this person who I love is dead. And I felt like it's because of me, that he wouldn't be dead if I didn't say anything about this meeting that I didn't think was going to happen so quickly. But I also knew it was the right thing to do. And that is what kind of started me into this whole, okay, this needs to happen more. I didn't realize that everyone was waiting for someone to speak up, and that I could be that voice, and anyone can be that voice if they choose to be. And so that's what started this journey of oh, maybe there's something else I can do.
Well, I have two questions. I have a comment and a question, because I'm curious if you got pushback then from other nurses and doctors after that conversation. But before you answer that, it reminds me, because we often meet with people at very different stages of their lives. And a friend of ours, he's still very attached to his mother who passed years ago, but he has a lot of regret. And he said, which I thought was very honest and painful, is that he wished that he hadn't kept her alive for so long, because he felt that she suffered and it was selfish of him because he didn't want to let her go. And I think I think I read that you actually had that conversation with people, or you recognize that, because when my father went into the ICU, I mean, he was sick with cognitive decline and Alzheimer's for 7 years. And then he was in a nursing home. Then there was COVID, and he has diabetes. It was thing after thing, right?
Yes.
And then the vaccinations. And it was just, then he ended up in the ICU. And I remember I flew in from New York because that's where we live. And my sisters and my mom are in Los Angeles. And we're sitting in the waiting room. And so I was there the next day. He went in the day before. And one of my sisters said, Dad, he's looking better. His color's good. And I had enough experience by that time that I knew he wasn't coming out of the hospital. And I knew this was the end. He had weeks maybe, right? And I looked at her and I didn't, and it's funny because after I thought, well, could I have been more sensitive? I just looked at her and I said, Dad's never coming home. Like, this is the end. And they were shocked. And I think that to your point, many people obviously don't want to hear that or face that reality.
Yeah. Yeah, in the ICU, we do a lot of that. A lot of like, their color looks good. We don't maybe say that, but we'll say like, and I truly don't think anyone's purposely doing that. It's like you have blinders on. When you're in healthcare, unless you're working in hospice, you are working to keep people alive at all costs. And I feel like death is not the worst possible outcome. Suffering is, and we cause so much suffering because that's our mentality. And we'll say things like, their creatinine numbers are looking better. On X-ray, their lungs are looking a little more clear, right? And that's the only thing families hear. Because why wouldn't they? If you don't work in healthcare, you don't know any better. So you're just listening to what people are telling you. And everyone has their own little section that they're staying in, right? The pulmonologists are staying in with the lungs. The kidney doctors are talking about the kidneys. There's very few doctors or healthcare professionals that are looking at the person as a whole and then saying what the reality is. They're all saying little things like their kidneys are looking a little better. They're kind of passing the buck, assuming that someone else is going to eventually say what's happening.
Is it because they don't want to get in trouble, or it's against hospital policy, or is it that everybody's just so uncomfortable with death? Because in our culture, unfortunately, aging, elders, sickness, like even the way sickness is dealt with, right? It's just so different in other parts of the world. What do you think the reason is?
I think there's many reasons. I think you're not taught in school. In nursing school, I honestly don't remember anything taught to me about a dying person. It's all about trying to keep someone alive and what to do if X, Y, and Z happen. So one, I don't think it's taught very well. And if it is, it's very quickly brushed over. 2, time. I think a lot of sensitive topics take time, and you have to have trust built with the family. I don't think it's good to say it. You need to be blunt, but not like harsh. And you don't always have time to do that. So it's not done. And also, I think people are afraid they're wrong. I know that's why I didn't speak up a lot. I was like, well, maybe someone else knows something else that I don't know. Or if it's not the main reason they're there. For instance, if someone's in the ICU because they have a blood clot, but the main reason why they might be dying is because they have some kind of terminal cancer. The doctors that is dealing with the blood clot doesn't feel like it's their place to say, and you have this terminal cancer over here that isn't looking so hot. So I think they pass the buck in the sense of assuming someone else is going to take that responsibility. And that's not necessarily true.
So did you get pushback that first time you did that?
The first time? No, I mean, generally speaking, I did not get pushback. And that is what I think changed how I started viewing everything. I thought I would get pushback. And when I saw how quickly everyone was like, yes, 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 and scheduled the appointment, and the social worker was right there, and the family was on board, and all the doctors showed up, I was like, whoa, I think everyone was hoping someone would say this, and just no one said it. So every once in a while, depending on the attending, so I think certain attendings, depending on age and like what they were taught, you'd get a little more pushback, a little more like, well, you never know, which is, but most of the time, even when I got confident enough, when someone would say, well, you never know, I would say, we've been doing this for a long time. And I think you and I can both say, we kind of do know ish. I get what they mean by that. we ultimately don't know. But we can look at our experience and give them a little more realistic view of what's happening. And I would never get pushback. I can't think of one time I got real pushback from that because they know I'm right, generally speaking. But I think generally speaking, I didn't get pushback. No.
I have a whole list of questions. Do you want to chime in? I keep talking.
I was just going to say.
Going on and on. I'm so sorry.
To your point. So it was an accumulation of moments like that.
Yes, moments like that eventually made me
decide. Meaning, and what was your thought process? You could be more helpful, or it's just
it was
more real?
more like pushed by pain in the sense of like, I got to get out of the ICU. That's a whole nother topic. It's like, I was not happy in my career. And this was something that I thought I was going to love. Like I had ideas about what my life was going to be. I was going to be an ICU nurse and then go back to school for anesthesia. And I was working at the #1 hospital in the country for a reason. I thought I was going to be lit on fire with this job and this career. And it was slowly burning out my fire. So that was really scary, so I wasn't necessarily being like, hospice is my passion. I was more like, this is just not. And the more I talked about and thought about why, the more I started being like, well, maybe hospice would be a better thing, and it still took me like 6 years.
Which is wild because that's not the natural progression, I think, for a person to go like from ICU to hospice again, because it's the thing that people avoid the most. It's the most uncomfortable reality, uncomfortable conversation. And that's why this really inspires me. But I want to get...
Well, were you afraid as a child, as an adult, were you afraid of death?
No.
Never afraid of death?
Not really. As a child, I can remember I've always been someone who was like existentially being like, Mommy, where did we come from? Where are we going? What's going on? Why are we here? Like, what is this all about? I can remember like my earliest memories are of me contemplating these things that like usually little girls aren't. And my mom would be like, honey, don't worry about it. We're all going to be fine. She didn't always have the answers, sure. Right? And she was kind of like, why is my little girl always talking about this? So I've always been like that. So like life and death have always been interesting to me. And I had a lot of fear. I had a lot of generalized anxiety about all types of irrational things. But when it came to death, it was more like fascinating.
Interesting. That's profound. Because I had the same questions also, which is unusual, like 3, 4. The death part, not so much. It was more like, why are we here? What are we meant to do? Where's God? Where did I come from?
Yes.
Where are we going? But it's an interesting thing. One of the most powerful things that you've shared is that even unconscious patients can still hear us, which I really want to talk about. There's a few things I was sharing with you before we started that when I was reading about you that I just, on the flight over here yesterday, I started crying. It just brought me back to moments with my father. And I innately knew that in the room, which really upset me when conversations would go in a different kind of way that were out of my control. But it's such a precious reminder of presence, right? Because I think most people say, oh, well, he's not responding to anything. They must not be there. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so studies show that the hearing sensor of our brain is the last to shut down. That's why we think people can hear us. So they've done EEGs either accidentally or purposely on people who are dying. And the EEGs show that even though they're not physically responding to you, there are the parts of their brain that can process hearing. And like, you can tell that that's working. Were lighting up when people were talking, right? So, and on top of that, people who have been in medically induced comas, who weren't necessarily dying, but were technically like unconscious, would come out of that and say, I could hear this nurse who always sang to me, and kind of almost like sense people were in the room. There were things that were still kind of turned on for them, even though technically we were saying they weren't, right? Because they were unconscious. And I like to say, so talk to people, talk to them like they're in the room, even if they're not responding to you. And I don't want people to think though, because I think a lot of times people think, oh my God, they're like stuck in their body and they can't do anything. I don't think it's like that. And even people who have come out of comas said it didn't feel like that. It was more like
A knowing, right?
A knowing. And it was comforting. Usually, like, they loved the nurse that came in and always sang, even if the nurse wasn't like singing to them. It was just like, oh, there she is, you know? So, and they could feel their dad and kind of like hear the conversation. So it's a comforting thing to me to know that that's still present.
Because I felt like with my father, I think often souls are afraid to leave the loved ones behind. And if we're struggling in the room and there's crying and don't go, and I think it holds them, this is my personal belief, that it holds them back. I went in the room and I kept saying to my father, like, we are all okay. Everybody's okay. And even if you're worried about them, they're going to be okay. You're free to leave, because his body just wasn't working anymore. So for me, that was more painful than any other reality for him. Right. And eventually, well, I'll get to that later, but he did acknowledge that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so important for people to know that like creating a nice space for the person dying and acknowledging that, like, we know you can hear us talking to them. Acknowledging that, like, hey, we know you're going through this and we're here, period.
You call this the unconscious wall, right? The hearing.
Did I?
Yeah, you did, actually.
I love that. It happens all the time. And even people will be like, in your book you said, I'm like, did I say that? I like it.
Well, you do. It does lead to, there's the deathbed phenomenon. So this is the other part I was crying about. So from visioning to terminal lucidity, you've witnessed moments that seem to defy explanation. Even dehydration as being part of a peaceful passing. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm quoting you. Deathbed visioning, where individuals nearing death see or sense deceased loved ones. Terminal lucidity, a burst of clarity or energy before passing, a peaceful passing. And the comforting role of dehydration, which explains that it can ease the dying process by triggering natural endorphins, causing euphoric pain relief.
Yeah.
So let's go through. I think we should go through each one of those.
Which is profound. The story I wanted to share with you was terminal lucidity I experienced with my father, which is shocking because for 7 years, he didn't respond at all in a typical way. And I remember I had this inclination to go back he was in hospice, to go into his room with one of my sisters. I'm like, I have to go see Dad today. It has to be now. It's a very special day for me personally. And I walked in and I was doing what I had been doing for weeks. Rubbing his chest. I love you. You're free to leave. You've been a great father. Like, just really profound conversations. And, but this time he woke up and he looked at me, like fully looked at me in the eyes. And then he started looking behind him because he knew my sister was there, which again, he didn't have that for years. Yeah. And I was like, squeeze my hand if you respond. He did. I took a picture of all of our hands, but we had this, like, he made, facial gestures he had, and he recognized me in his eyes. And then he went back into the other state, but it was the biggest gift, and it taught me a lot about death as well.
Yeah. So it's so beautiful. I mean, to me, the most beautiful thing about when I became a hospice nurse that first year, coming from the ICU to going to hospice, is seeing things like that, seeing not only the quote unquote, like, unexplainable, right? The miracle. Terminal lucidity, where someone gets that burst of energy, or the visioning where you literally see people talking to their father who's been dead for 20 years. That's a miracle and insane right there. But the even more beautiful thing to me was seeing how our bodies were built to die. Like when we talked about the dehydration at the end of life and how it's literally built in, the body will try to get us dehydrated at the end of life.
Explain that.
So our bodies are literally built to survive birth and grow and live. And if you are dying a natural death, meaning from something, but you're kind of like allowing the natural process to happen, and if it's happening gradually, the body will turn off the hunger and thirst mechanism so you don't feel hungry, you don't feel thirsty. It raises calcium levels in our blood so we feel tired all the time, right? Which you might not feel good, but it's like, it's almost like your body's cocooning. Your body knows, hey, I'm done here. Like, and I'm going to feel better if I sleep, and the body will make you sleep, make you not eat and drink, because if you don't eat and drink, you can go into ketosis, which releases endorphins. It's different than like diet ketosis.
Right.
Ketosis.
That's all everybody's.
In this day and age, like people try to get,
Like,
it's
oh,
different. It's because you're not eating at all. You're not drinking at all. And granted, if someone wants food and water, by all means, they get whatever they want, right? But a lot of times they don't want food and water because their body intuitively knows I'm going to feel better the drier I am. It releases endorphins, it dulls pain, it gives you a euphoric feeling. And even if you tried to, a lot of times people don't, they think their loved one's suffering, right? So it's like they're dehydrated, they need to get IVs, they need to do this, which I understand. That's why I try to educate about this so often, because I get the inclination to want to do that. But if someone's truly end of life, even if you gave them IV hydration, the IV hydration will not even stay intravascular and kind of perk them up like it would normally. It would seep out. It would cause third spacing, edema. It would be too much fluid for the body to handle. And it usually causes for respiratory distress, just agitation, like a little bit of a rougher death. And it's because the body's going, no, like I'm done. Like my physical body is done and it's not going to tolerate this. And to me, watching that as an ICU nurse, seeing how the body can just naturally start shutting down, and we didn't have to really do anything medical to help this person, it was like, whoa, this is, I mean, I hate using the word magical because I don't know what I mean by that, but like it felt magical. It felt like, wow, this is, our bodies are built to do this.
Reminds me of a Mumford & Sons song. Do you like Mumford? We just went to their concert.
I do like them. I don't know their songs enough to like know verses, but
this one verse is, in this body we will live and in this body we will die.
Yeah.
And he sings it really beautifully, but you think about it, you know, but we're so used to assuming that we will always have our health. We will always have this body, and we take it for granted all the time. But if you think about it, it's just a house for our soul, and it's a visit. It's not forever in that way.
But I wanted to ask, can you share some stories of, if you have, of visioning, which I think is just fascinating. It is something that we've spoken about, and I find very interesting.
Yeah, my grandmother was having the best time towards the end. She kept seeing her late husband, who was like the love of her life. Oh. She's like, oh, she was actually elated. I mean,
yes,
for that part when she had those visions.
Yes. So I'll share a story, but I also want to explain a little bit about visioning because I think it's really, there's a lot of misconceptions. People, like when I first started hospice nursing, and we had a pamphlet of a book of like what to expect when someone's dying. And I was like insulted by my hospice company that they actually put in there around a month before someone dies, they may start seeing the unseen and having visitors that you can't see. Like there was a whole explanation of vision. And I remember thinking, we are medical professionals and you are putting that, like you're putting something like this in a book for like how irresponsible, because I just couldn't believe it. This was real. Right. So I remember being like, what kind of company is this? You know, until I really started seeing it from my own eyes. And it is not. A lot of people will say, oh, it's delirium. Oh, it's from all the medication. It's from lack of oxygen. I don't know what it is, but I can tell you what it's not. And it's not those things, because it's not necessarily on their quote unquote deathbed. It's like 3 weeks out. Many people are alert, oriented, walking around and enjoying their life, and just as confused as everybody else, that like, I cannot believe this. I can't explain this, but I am seeing my dad. And he has said to me, hey, I love you. And you're not leaving yet. Don't worry, but I'm coming back, you know, in a little bit. And I just want you to know, like, we're going to be here for you every step of the way. We got you. Don't worry.
But not in a dream state. You're saying like we're sitting here together. They're seeing somebody.
They are sitting. So it can be in a dream state, but most of the time it's not. Most of the time, like the story I want to tell you is a family called me. They were super concerned because their dad was trying to tell them that, listen, my dad came to me last night. He was right here at the end of the bed. And he said he was coming back for me soon and not to worry. And he was really happy about it. And they called me, the hospice nurse, scared that their dad had a sudden change in condition. He's confused. He's saying he's seeing his dead dad. I don't know what's going on. So I'm like, I knew what was going on, but I just said, okay, no problem. I'll come by and I'll make sure everything's okay. And I come in and no one wants to talk about it. They're all like waiting for me to kind of say something. And they were all together in the room. And I'm like, how you feeling today? Like, you know, can you give me the date, the time, blah, 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 blah. Make sure he's oriented. Everything's fine. And he seemed fine. He didn't seem confused at all. So I was like, okay, you know, I'm glad you're doing great, blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm going to go talk to your family outside. And he's like, great. And they leave the room and I'm going to leave the room and he grabs my arm and he goes, hey, they think I'm confused. I don't know what's going on, but I'm telling you, I saw my dad last night. And he's whispering, I saw my dad last night. He came to my bed and he's kind of starts getting teary-eyed because he hadn't seen his dad for, 20 years. I saw my dad and I don't know why, but I did. And he said, I'm not going yet, but I'm going to, and he's going to take care of me. And everyone's here. They're just waiting for me, blah, 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 blah. Right. And I go, how's that make you feel? And he was like, good. It makes me want to cry because he was like, good. I feel better. I feel comforted. Like this is okay. And I'm like, you're okay. It's something called visioning. It happens all the time. As long as you feel good about it, just go with it. I'll talk to your family. He's like, okay. So then I leave and the family pulls me to the kitchen. Something's wrong with him. And then they're whispering, he told us that his dad died 10 years ago. I don't know what's going on, and it did happen at night, right? So it happened at night. Is he confused? They were just concerned because why is he, and he said he's going soon, right? Like he's not going yet, but he's going soon. What does that mean? And it was just a matter of, listen, this is what happens. It's called visioning. We don't know why it happens, but it often looks like this. Someone doesn't have to be confused to be experiencing that. They can be confused, but they don't have to be. And we don't know why. And it's likely not because of medication. It's definitely not because of lack of oxygen. It's just something that happens. And it's super comforting for him.
How long after did he go?
What was that?
How long after did he leave?
I don't honestly know. It is usually about a month. Like if anything for hospice nurses, the way I look at it, besides it being a beautiful thing, I look at it as like a timeline. So if someone says to me, hey, I've been seeing my dead aunt who I loved, I know there's probably about a month left. Usually about a month. And everyone's different, but that is generally speaking, it's like a few weeks to a month out. They start seeing people.
It's a very spiritual thing. I mean, in Kabbalah and the main wisdom, the text, it talks about how the soul starts to slowly leave the body before, and these kinds of situations prepare that process to happen.
I can totally see that. I always stand on this ground of like, I don't know, right? I never want to take a hard, like, this is exactly what I believe, right? And especially the more I experience, the more I'm like, I don't know. I think it's all good, but I don't really know. But yeah, I mean, I can see that. I do feel like people, like the essence of the person is kind of like sometimes less and less there, in the sense of like they're in one world and also another. And the best advice I can give to families that I always try to give if they're open to it is just, like try to take it day by day. Let this be, keep their body clean, safe, and comfortable, and let this process naturally happen, because there is a natural way to it all. And like the more we can kind of understand that, the easier it can sometimes go. Emotionally, physically, all the things,
Right, because I think part of the difficulty in this topic is that most people equate death to suffering.
Yeah.
And it's complicated, right? People leave at different stages, different ages, different ways. Some are very painful, others people leave in their sleep, some have a long illness, some don't. So I think that's so you say a natural death. Yeah, I think that that's the lucky way, right? Oh,
exactly. I mean, exactly. There are and certain diseases that it's not super easy. There are, I just had a patient the other day, 44 years old, young, not a great disease they're dying from. And very, very few days of my career am I have that really, really hard time. I mostly love what I do, and it's not actually depressing most of the time. But just a couple of days ago, I had one of those days that I was like, oof, this is a hard one to brush off, because it does feel unfair. It does feel a little too hard for me even just to witness it, let alone the person going through it, and then their family and then their children, So it's not, always easy, or no, yeah, it's just not easy, period. And I think education helps decrease fear enough that even though it's still sad, it can feel sacred, I think. Because how often do we get to like hold someone's hand while they take their last breath? That's not always guaranteed to us. And I think there is something sacred in that. Only because I think because I've witnessed it so many times, and it's not my grief, like it's not my sadness, I'm not losing the person, that me being like a third party witness to it is like, whoa, you guys. I don't know if everyone realizes this, but this is crazy what's happening in a way that's like, I feel like all of life is revealed to me in that moment. If that makes sense. Like that little girl, that little 5-year-old girl that's like, that's so what's this all about, Mom? Right? And then when I like see someone taking their last breath and all their families around them saying sweet nothings, and it's like, I can't believe I get to witness this. It's like the most, this is what life is all about. This.
It's interesting you use the word sacred because, as Monica mentioned, my mom passed away 5 years ago. And I was there.
You can get me crying all day. But
I love that you guys keep looking at each other. It's like the best. It's the best.
And we were in the room. It was early morning. And actually, this is the other thing, which at some point I want to ask you, but she knew, she said, this is the last few minutes. She knew. And because my mother was relatively, to us, it seemed, in the same state for at least a week or two.
Yeah.
But she knew it was the last few minutes. We were all gathered in the room. And when she took her final breath, and it was very obvious that it was her final breath, it was a deep breath. And then she passed, and I would say her soul left her body. And to me, I've told this to a few people before, but that to me, it felt like the most sacred moment I ever experienced in my life.
Yep.
Something, and again, I don't think it's explainable. You know, like you said, I think there's so much of this that it's a mystery, but when you experience it, it is beyond anything holy and sacred that I've ever experienced in my life before that.
I mean, here's the thing, right? If you've been in the room watching a baby be born, or you've been birthed, it's sacred also because it's the first breath, right? Yep. But we go to that with great anticipation because it's hopeful and we understand it. We know what's going to happen next, usually, typically. With death, it's the unknown, and you either don't believe in life after death, or you deeply believe, which we clearly do. So I want to ask you, do you believe in life after death, and did you always, and how has this changed your view, having these experiences?
I have always, which I always think is so peculiar because I grew up with an atheist dad, an Irish Catholic mom. So like, it was like religion, but it was like a very, it's a whole other story. But so it was like, I mean, and an atheist dad that was like very vocal about like, when you die, you die. And I'm like 5, you know, like, oh, wait, really? What? Like, what? When you die, you die. What do you mean? So nothing was like sugar coated, but I always had, I remember thinking like, almost like, I know you're wrong, Dad. Like, I just knew. And it doesn't even matter if I'm right or wrong. Like, this has been my experience. There is something I always say, I have always felt homesick for a place that I can't remember. It makes me want to cry every time I say it because it makes me homesick and sad, but also like, I'm so grateful that I know that place. I know that place. And whenever I watch someone die, I feel that place. I feel it. And I'm like, oh, you get to be there. I'm so happy for you. And whenever I see a baby being born, I'm like, you just came from there. It's like they're on angel's wings. And it's like, where have you been, baby? Like whenever I see baby like looking at me, I always think like, you're so close. You know, I miss that place so much and I can't. And if anything, my life has just affirmed that over and over again. And I also feel like even if I'm wrong, which I very well could be, I'm also okay with that because life has been so beautiful. And even if when we die, we just go back to the earth and whatever that means, right? I also think like, isn't it a beautiful thing that I have this body that has helped me live and has done all of these things automatically, helps me breathe, helps my heart beat, helps me die. That's really beautiful too.
So that's an interesting perspective that I think our listeners really need to hear. That the body and you said this a little bit earlier, but the body helps a person die. It's so set up because this is all of our experience in life. It's the living, the birth, the living, and then the exiting and the death to go somewhere else. A friend of mine recently gave birth to her second child, and she's like a month old. And I saw her a few days ago, and she's looking at me, but like really looking at me. And I swear to you, I don't know who she is yet, but I know her. And we're having this whole conversation. I'm like, I know, you know me. And she'd like start smiling every time I would confirm what I felt. And I'd be like, okay, I can't wait to hear all about you. I know you recognize me, and I know you know me, and I know you. And she'd start giggling and looking more intently, you know? And it was just, it's that profound, that's like the experience I had with my father, but in a different way. It's the exact, that revolving door. It's really quite beautiful.
It really, really is. That's why if I wasn't doing hospice nursing, I don't think I have it in me to like really make the leap, but I would maybe be a labor and delivery nurse.
That's right.
It feels the same.
Yeah.
It feels the same.
The sacredness of it.
Yes. And I know that the sadness and the agony and the pain and the grief is all still there for people. So I think it's really hard sometimes when that's there to like really get to the sacredness of it. Hence why I started this whole like hospice nurse Julie and my book, not because I need everyone to get there, right? Because everyone's grief is different, but I do think preparation, understanding can help prepare you a little more so you can be present in those really uncomfortable moments. So you can still feel the sacredness, even if it's just for a bit, because what I've seen, right? Like your family, when I witness families being able to do that, it's like one of my greatest gifts where it's like, wow, you got to do that. Because I've seen the opposite, right? I've seen the opposite, and I don't blame them either, but it's like they weren't ready. They didn't know. They weren't willing to let it be that, right? And then it creates such a different scenario.
Also, I find that in those cases, people tend to stay stuck in the death and forget about the life that person lived. And I think grief, it's very personal, it's individual, and it's different for everybody. For me, it was a testament of how much I love my father. And the more you love, the more you grieve. And it's there for that process, but it's a process. And then I got to the place where I just was so appreciative that he was my father, and I stayed there with it.
That's right. Yeah. Come a little bit off topic, but I just recently saw, it was Jerry Garcia's death anniversary a few days ago. And so I saw.
I don't know where you're going with this.
No, I just saw an interview with his bandmates a day or a week after. And they asked them, what did you guys do when you got together? And they said, like, were you crying? And he said, no, he would never allow that.
They got high, probably. I don't know.
But the point is, if you think about what they would want you to be doing. Right. They love you so much. Of course, they wouldn't want you to be sad all the time and crying all the time. They would want you to be happy to the degree that you can be.
And that's a whole nother thing about like talking about preparation, having those conversations before they die, even saying like, I don't want, of course people are still going to be sad, but I think there is, there's
permission, maybe to get.
This is the story of my life.
I think it's right. That point I think you're saying is that for the person who's leaving, to tell his family, I don't want you to be sad or too sad, because I think sometimes it's almost a sense of I have to be sad. You know? But if they tell you, no, I really want you to be happy. I want you to remember me, and every time you remember me, just to be happy, right? I think that helps transform the experience.
Yes, but I think it depends on how that person obviously feels about going. I think for your mother, she said to you a few days before, like, of course, maybe it was a few weeks, I want to still be here, but I lived a good life and I did everything that I needed to do. That person you're basically saying, okay, we can celebrate this. My father literally like left a paper half written with a pen open, and that was the last of him like really here. So when he passed, my pain wasn't for me. It was that I felt the pain of him not doing what he wanted to do in this life. All right. That was very, very painful. Now, then again, you lean into faith. I believe in reincarnation. I was like, he's going to be first in line to come right back, and he's going to be really excited about it. I know my dad, right? Mm-hmm. He's probably back already. That's my personal belief. But I think that's what this conversation is so necessary, whatever one believes.
Right. And I think it's really important and necessary to say the truth of what is going on, even if it's really painful. And for an example, like the person who's 44 years old, right? They are angry. They are scared. They are sad that they don't want this to be happening. I think we don't need to have conversations like, it's okay. I mean, we can. It's okay. Don't be sad, blah, blah, blah. But
No,
also,
it's
like, there's
horrible.
something
Yeah.
about the most I've seen help is like two people saying the truth. One person, like patients who say to me, I'm angry. I don't want this to be happening. Why is this happening? And then because I'm used to this, right, I'm able to just go, yeah. Like, I don't ever go, don't be angry. Don't be this. It's like, yeah. Thank God you're able to say something like that to me, because most people aren't. And the people who are willing to say the truth, even if it's something like, I'm angry, this sucks, I don't want to be doing this. There is something that's freeing in that. And I always tell them that too. I say, the fact that you're even willing to say that, you are beyond what most people can do. And that is going to set you even a little bit free for one moment, right? And for teaching families to say their truth back. I'm angry too. I'm sad too. I don't want you to go. Even just because there is connection in truth. And even though it's hard, there is something that's like moving and freeing and can like almost set you free in that moment by two people being truthful, if that makes sense. So even if the truth seems scary and like, it's not going to be good to both say that you're angry about
I always wondered about that. That's interesting, but that's a new perspective that I don't think that I
You wondered?
had. Meaning, if you have the choice, and obviously we don't have the choice because every person are going through this in their own way, but if you had the choice to tell somebody who is dying, you should tell your family members that you're sad and upset, as opposed to either being silent, or not talking about it. You're saying that you think it is helpful even in those cases.
I think it's all individualized. Right. But generally speaking, if you are having like a hospice death, meaning like you've got some time to prepare, right? I think having multiple conversations about what's happening, how you're feeling that day, what's going on, I think will be beneficial. And the most beneficial conversations will be truthful. Even if that day, the truth is, this is a rough day. I am not feeling this. This is hard. I'm sad. I'm angry. Because just for example, like people always ask me, are you afraid of death? Generally speaking, no. I have a book called Nothing to Fear. No, I don't really fear death.
I have a book called Fear is Not an Option. It's not about death though.
Yeah, that's good. But I'm still a human being. So if I get diagnosed with something terminal tomorrow, I'm still going to have a human experience and have some days where I'm angry and sad and scared and be a little kid. I don't want to do this. I'm still going to have that. And I think everyone will. And I think it's important to kind of be able to be free enough to talk about that. And only from my experience that people who are willing to do that seem to live better while they're still here and die more peacefully.
Speaking of truth, you probably hear a lot of people's truths when they're about to leave. It's interesting because I've been quoting, do you know Bronnie Ware? She wrote The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. She was a hospice nurse. And I've quoted her so many times in speeches I've given to have people appreciate life, right? Like I always, again, death is a motivator for a good life. So she has the top 5. I'm sure your list would be similar, but what are some of the things that people have told you on their deathbed?
The one
regrets.
The biggest regrets.
Yeah. The very one that I always hear is not appreciating their health while they had it. So that's the number one thing I hear. And I always talk about regrets. Most people don't really go, I regret this. It's over time. I hear little tidbits of them being like, I wish I would have that. I wish I would have this. Right. And the thing most people talk about is like, I wish I would have appreciated, how much I used to love cheeseburgers and how they tasted and like the feeling of wanting the food. Now they don't really have the appetite. If they do, it doesn't taste the same or they get full too easy. The fact that they used to be able to walk down the stairs really easy and like shower by themselves, and all of those things that we all take for granted.
Even like just the sun on your shoulders.
Yes.
Or, you know.
Yes. I truly do contemplate my own mortality on a daily basis, not in a morbid way, in a beautiful way, like understanding and truly reminding myself every single day, if not multiple times a day, that my health is not guaranteed. My life is not guaranteed. And and it helps me be so grateful for like the taste of my coffee, the sunlight on my face, specifically in my bed when the shade is down. Like I have a whole thing where I'm so appreciative of this like one little spot in my room that I can sit in the morning. And yeah, so people think like contemplating life, your death every day. But yes, that really does keep me in a place of like, I love Topo Chico. The sparkling water.
What's that? Sorry, I missed. What is that?
I love Topo Chico, the sparkling water.
Oh,
like I love it.
I didn't think it was the part. I was like, what is this cheesy dessert you're talking about?
It's sparkling water to me. And you guys have sparkling water, but not that sparkling water, Topo Chico sparkling water. Like certain things like that where like, I'm so grateful I can like taste how sparkly this is. Like little things like that where like, I'm so grateful I can swallow this so easily. And the fact that I like crave certain foods, I'm so grateful that I crave certain foods, because a lot of that goes away at the end of life. And people are like, I miss wanting Taco Bell.
But that's why this conversation of death and not being afraid to look at death, think about it, talk about it is so important, because what it does is it activates appreciation.
Yes.
Which is the most spiritual state to be in. And it's the thing that we lose most quickly in life. As soon as you find your soulmate, you stop appreciating them. As soon as you are able to conceive and you had wanted to, it's not as, you can lose your temper and, lose. It's just, it's human nature, right?
Yes.
It's the only thing. I think the conversation of death and understanding the beauty in it is the most humbling experience that's so necessary.
Yeah. And of course, it's easy for me to say, I think I'm a hospice nurse. I'm kind of like around it all the time. So it is easier, I think, for me to be reminded a lot. But I always say I'm the most grateful for my job, like being a hospice nurse, most grateful for that, because it just reminds me of life. Like it reminds me of life so much, and connecting to people. I mean,
in
especially like
way.
You can get so caught up in like the world today. And I get it. I don't blame people. I understand it can feel scary, all the things, right? But like when I just zero in on like this one person that I'm meeting for today and they get to share their life with me for this like little brief moment, I leave that house, all houses, no matter what's going on, being like, I cannot believe I just got to meet this person. They are so amazing. I walk into like a house that they've had since 1950. They have like the same furniture with like covers, pictures everywhere. They grew up in wherever, and I get to hear about it's like the most amazing thing. And I get to see their family and their family loving them. And that is how I know the world, right? The world, like meeting individuals like that, where it's like, this is the best. This is the best. I'm so lucky that I get to do this.
I keep crying over here, and I think it's because it's just truly inspiring what you do.
Thank you.
And I think that I think that that's the state that we need to strive to live in. But I just find it very beautiful.
You guys are both really beautiful. I love this whole dynamic here that's going on. Like, I love that you guys keep going.
Yeah.
It's so great. It's so lovely.
We actually just celebrated our 28th wedding anniversary.
You're celebrating it, or you celebrated?
Just did.
That was a Mumford & Sons concert.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's amazing.
I don't know my makeup.
So I think the number one was appreciation. Meaning
yes. Okay.
What you learned from and number two?
Number two, I think they all kind of go together, but it's mostly about, I worked too much.
That was one of hers.
Yeah, they worked too much. They kind of like waited for life to begin, right? So it's kind of all the same. Like I worked too much thinking eventually I would, then once this happens, then I'll do this. So that's a lot of what I hear, you know, like especially if people are just retiring, but now they are terminally ill. It's like, we waited my whole life. You know, I worked this job that I hated because eventually I was going to be able, you know, instead of living the life they wanted to live in the day that they were in. I think a lot of people talk about, you know, caring too much what people think, not making up with people, you know, or like not keeping, you know, not letting people go too quickly or too easily, kind of like icing people out when maybe they could have been a little more loving, or keeping connections.
Those were the 3 too, she said. Yeah,
I was gonna say like that's like that whole essence. I feel like that's almost all the same thing, but it's like usually about like how they lived, who they kept up with or didn't keep up with, and caring too much about like what this life that they were supposed to do. And now it's like, now that their life's over,
they've run out of time.
They're like, wait,
I didn't live my life.
Yeah, I didn't live my life.
And you might not remember offhand, but do you remember any specific stories with any one of those regrets that people shared with you?
The only specific stories I can remember, they're really general. But it's like, I can picture like a man who really wanted to eat chicken wings because he like loved these chicken wings, and he finally kind of had an appetite. This is where this sticks out, but this happens all the time, where it's like he finally kind of felt like, you know what? Because I'll always go there and be like, is there anything you feel like though? Because they never want to eat or drink. And I'm always like, you don't have to worry about it. But is there anything you really want? You know? And then they'll be like, actually, yeah, I kind of love these certain chicken wings from such and such place down the street, blah, blah, blah. And of course, their family's so excited that they actually are in the mood for something, right? So they'll go get it. They'll be like, done, let's go. And I think his were like butter and garlic, because I remember thinking like, oh my God, I love butter and garlic wings too. And then when he ate it though, it didn't taste the same.
Yeah.
It didn't taste the same. He particularly had a certain cancer where the chemo he had affected, not only was he not hungry because he was dying, but he also, food didn't taste the same. So even though he had this hankering, then he got the thing and then he ate it, it was kind of like, oh, it's not as good as it used to be. I wish I could. He's like, I can remember when I used to be able to just like house 12 wings, you know, easy. And now here I am, like barely getting one down. Doesn't really taste the same. And, you know,
that's heartbreaking, right?
That's heartbreaking. And that's a sad moment. But it also is like, to be able to witness that, there's something about like even witnessing sadness, like the truth in it, the humanity in it is like, I love this. I love you. I love the realness of this. I love the realness of you and the family all still being there. It's sad. Yes, period. It's sad, period. And I think I just love the connection, even if it's sad. It's like, wow, good for you for not faking it, for not going and trying to make everyone happy. And like, it's like, good for you.
Being honest.
Just being honest.
You talked about something called rallying phenomenon.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that? Because I think that's an interesting idea too. And go ahead.
Yeah. So the rally or the surge is like the nickname for terminal lucidity, which is the biggest phenomena that happens at the end of life. So if there's anyone that's seen the most, it's this phenomena. Happens in 1/3 of all patients, which means like 1 in every 3 people dying will experience this. A lot of times it's missed because people don't,
or they're not there.
They're not there, or they don't realize that it is what it is until they're gone. But it's what you experienced, where someone looks like they are getting very close to death, very, very close. Like sometimes they're fully unconscious. They haven't been awake for weeks or a week. It looks like they're going to die, you know, any day. And then suddenly they'll have a burst of energy. And everyone's burst of energy will look different. Sometimes it's radical. Sometimes it is like they are up and awake and saying they want a cheeseburger, or they're hungry. They eat like their last meal. They fully are alert and oriented again. And they'll have like a good day. So the thing with the rally is that it's usually only a day or 2, maybe. If someone's like lasting like this for a long time, it's not the rally. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, but it's not that. The rally is like looks like you're going to die, burst of energy, and then you die shortly after.
And do you know what the medical scientific reason behind, is there a reasoning behind it?
No, we don't know.
We have no idea.
We have no idea.
Interesting?
There's theories. I mean, people who are not medical professionals will always say, oh, it's a release of DMT. This. And that there's no backing behind that. We have no idea. You know, we're not sure if it could be a release of cortisol or something, but there's never been testing. We just know that it happens a lot. And I think it's really important to educate prior to it happening.
Exactly.
Because it's really hard to educate in the moment because people are so excited about this great moment. I still will because I don't want people to be shocked if their loved one dies soon after. But I always try to talk about, hey, this might happen.
You want to hold on to hope, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And my grandma had a really good rally.
Well,
my mom didn't know it was until she saw my videos. Because what's so funny is in my real life, no one ever asked me about my hospice nursing. At dinner parties, if I said like, oh, I'm a hospice nurse, people were like, ugh.
Really?
No one
That's
wanted to know stories, right? Even my own family. So they hear about stuff like through my videos. So my mom watched my rally video and she was like, you know, I think grandma had the rally. My grandma lived to be like 93, I think. On her 91st birthday, she was like irritated that she was having a birthday. She was like, she constantly was like, I'm ready to go. I want to die. I want to die. And she was still like spunky and funny. And she just was like, I'm old and I am done with this. Like she couldn't see, she couldn't hear. She was like, I just want out of here. So it was kind of a blessing. She was like ready to go 2 years before she even died. But my mom, she had 8 children. So my mom was taking one of the turns to watch her while she was basically actively dying, which meant like fully unconscious, had not eaten and drank anything in days. It was like any day now she was going to die. And it was Thanksgiving and there was a snowstorm. And my mom went to go sit with her and she brought a Thanksgiving meal, my mom, like for her to eat. And she walked in and my grandma was sitting up trying to put shoes on.
Oh
and my mom
God.
was like,
that's wild.
yes. So my mom was like, Mom, what are you doing? And she goes, we got to go, which is a classic dying thing. People saying they got to go home. They need to get somewhere. They're going on a trip.
Wow.
So my grandma was going, we got to go. And my mom was like, what the heck? So my mom was like, you're already home. You don't need to go anywhere. There's a snowstorm. It's Thanksgiving. I brought you some food. Let's have Thanksgiving dinner together. And she was like, okay, got right up and tasted the food, complained that it wasn't hot enough, which is exactly what my grandma would do. She wanted things like piping hot. And she was like, this isn't hot enough. And my mom was like, wow, she really is back to her old self. And again, this was years. I don't even think I definitely wasn't a hospice nurse yet. So she just thought grandma's having a good day or, I don't know. And she ate Thanksgiving. They talked kind of. My grandma went back to bed and then died. She basically went unconscious again after that and then died 3 days later.
Wow.
So that's a really good rally.
Wow.
A really good rally. She got up, she walked, she ate. That's
wild.
like, but that's an example of, that can be how dramatic it can be. So, and it happens in 1/3 of patients.
Yeah, I didn't know when it was happening. I was like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard of that. But I love this story. Your grandmother sounded like a firecracker.
Yeah, she's such a firecracker.
For people who fear death, which is basically everybody, what would you say is the first step to getting more comfortable with the idea?
I think, I was going to say like, listen to things like this, right? But it's like hard if you're, but just generally speaking, I think educating yourself, like everyone has like some interest, I think a bit, right? Whether it's the afterlife part or the biology part, or even thinking about how would you like, if you could pick the perfect way, right? Because we're all going to have an end of life journey. That's how it works here in this life. Like, what would be your perfect way? Even just starting to think about it, pick someone safe to talk about it with. I say safe because there are people who are going to shut you down if you try to talk to them, right? So someone else would be like a safe person. But I think just start, dipping your toe into however it is you learn, right? Do you like watching videos? Do you like listening to podcasts? Do you want to take the spiritual side of death and dying first? Or do you want the, like biology part? Because I think that's also fascinating. I like both. But I think my channel is mostly, there's some spiritual stuff now, but in the beginning, it was all about the biology of death. Because to me, that was fascinating and spiritual in my opinion.
Exactly.
But I don't say it like that. But so it's like, just kind of, I almost said pick your poison, but that's not, but yeah, like pick how you would want to start doing it, and just like dip your toe in, see how it feels. Because I think it will help. What I have seen anecdotally is that it helps people. It helps decrease fear. Education.
I have a question. It's a little bit off topic. So I hope I have the name right and the book right. Adam Pollan, is that his name? The book, How to Change Your Mind. So he's got a whole book about psychedelics and what's happening in the world of psychedelics. But what I found the most interesting, there was a 60-minute piece on this, where people who were terminally ill, I think it was at Johns Hopkins, they were in a setting with a doctor given DMT. And they interviewed the people before and after. They were very afraid of their imminent death because they were dying. And then after having that session, they were not anymore. And so I wanted to ask you if you've seen people who've either used it in this process, if you've seen any effects in that way. Because again, for me, it was just that profound understanding that you saw people who had cancer and they were dying, and they had this in a medical setting, use of DMT, and their whole fear of death went away.
Did they see what did they see there? It's obviously
they were just very accepting.
God.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of it, because they saw, whether they used the word God, there were different interviews, but they saw something bigger than just this life.
Your home, that feeling in your home that you. It's like,
So I was wondering if you, especially nowadays, it's kind of a little bit more, well known. Have you seen people?
I have not personally seen people. I have talked to people about their beliefs and just different things that have helped them, which I love. And I love anything that will open someone's heart and mind, however they get there, right? So on a side note, I'm sober, right? So I'm sober and 12-step program. So I'm definitely not anti people using things like that to come to a place of comfort. But from a personal experience, like I haven't had much personal experience with that.
Neither
right?
have we. Just to
no,
yeah. But I've heard so many people, even in sobriety, say to me, like just one of my close friends said, they had such a hard time with sobriety and a hard time with this 12-step program because there's a lot of God in the 12-step program, right? Not a religious God, but a generally speaking God, right? A higher power. And they would have a really hard time until they did shrooms one day. Obviously not sober. Did shrooms. And that shrooms experience really opened their mind to like, maybe there is a higher thing, right? So it's like, I think whatever it takes to get there, like, go for it. And I love that the medical field is getting more open to alternative things to help people. And I've heard many people tell me, I haven't witnessed it, right? But many people write into me and stuff about their experience with psychedelics or DMT or ketamine that has really helped their fear around death, whether they're not because they're terminal, but because they have a lot of fear. I've actually had a lot of people with death anxiety say that even just learning through my videos or other hospice nurses' videos, that it has helped decrease their death anxiety, which I never set out to do because I knew it was a thing, but not enough to start a channel for it, right? But I had several people write to me saying it's helped.
Well, because you're showing them another reality, another
reality.
Possibility of what that looks like and what comes after that.
Yeah.
Which is not usually discussed.
Yeah. But I do think, however people can start exploring that, it's like good for them, especially if it takes away the fear.
For sure.
At least for a moment or.
So a little bit off topic, but Monica and I actually did one episode years back, I think, around Monica and I mean, well, we have many different opinions on it, but for me, I think if somebody's in the process, or facing death, I think I'd be pro, then using these opportunities.
Well, at that point, because there's no right or wrong. It's just to help a person, I don't know why this is, you don't have to answer this question because maybe it's, but what do you think about euthanasia? Like, has anybody asked you to assist in the process of leaving sooner, or by the time that you work with them, they're kind of further along in that process?
Well, in California, I mean, we wouldn't call it euthanasia, but in California, you can legally end your life if
really?
you meet criteria. Yeah.
What
So 12 states in the U.S. you can take medication to end your own life if you meet criteria, and we have several. I've witnessed several people do it.
Really?
Mm-hmm. But the medical professional doesn't give the medication, or the person has to do it themselves. So the criteria is you have to have 2 doctors, 2 different times with time in between. So you need to prepare for this to say, yes, you're terminal and you have 6 months left to live. You have to prove that you're of sound mind. So someone with dementia, by the time they have 6 months left to live, they are not of sound mind, so they can't take it, right? So it's very specific. They have to prove that you're of sound mind, and you haven't had like a long history of like psychiatric issues, and you can prove that you're like alert and oriented. And then you have to prove that you can physically take it yourself.
Yeah.
So people with like ALS,
Right. That's interesting.
they can still do it, but it's a lot more strict, and you have to like really show there's a lot more like lines to cross. But so those are that's the criteria. And if you can get that, you can get medication, and you drink this medication and you die.
How are those experiences different for you when you've been in that kind of room, or versus?
It's a little more heavy because I fully believe in it, but because I want people to do whatever they want to do. It's a little more heavy because someone is very alert and awake, and like they're like, wow, they are really alive, right? And then they drink this drink and they are not. And they still go through all the phases, like the actively dying phase, which is the last phase of life where I think people can look the most different, where like they're breathing funny, their mouth's hanging open, they might have like a gurgling noise when they breathe, like all those things are normal, but you're not used to seeing them. That still happens,
But quickly.
Quickly.
That's wild.
Yeah. So it's like I was surprised by how quickly someone went unconscious, but then they kind of lingered longer than I thought they would. So it usually takes about 45 minutes. But it's very peaceful, and California is one of the states that allows it. The facility I work at is one of the facilities that like kind of openly offers it. We could never go, are you interested in this? We can't like really ever seem like we're pushing someone to do it. But if a patient of mine who is on hospice says to me, I wish I could just take something to end it all. If they say that, I can say, you can. There is something you can do. So I have done that, and then they have gone through the process of doing it, and that it's weird. I'm for it, but it is kind of like, wow, it feels, I never feel, it's not like guilt. It just feels like
it's different than the natural route.
Yes. Yeah. And it feels like a little, but I still feel grateful that I live in a state that is an option for some people if they want it. I do think there's a fine line, like you said, like the whole euthanasia thing, like in Canada and other countries, doctors can inject medication, and they are more of a part of that person's choosing to do so. Again, I like bodily autonomy, so I'm kind of like, hey, if that's what you want, who am I to say you can't do it? But I do think there's like a fine line. But
when my grandmother left, she opened her eyes and then she shed 3 tears. Have you seen that? I was confused by what that meant.
I have seen it a lot, and we mostly in the health.
Do you think it's just a body response? It felt purposeful though.
I know. Well, that's what I hate to say. Like, I think everyone has messages, and I believe in like a soul, and we're not just a body, right? I believe that. So it's like, I think if someone feels like the tears were a message or something that was comforting to them, I want them to like go with that, right? Generally speaking, as healthcare professionals, we would say it's probably biological, because there's a lot of stuff going on with the eyes actually at the end of life where they're not blinking as much. They sometimes hang open. The eyes are trying to protect itself. They're actually changing. There's a word for it that I always forget the word, but there's basically like a lot more fluid sometimes on the eye. So it creates more tears. That's why we do see tears a lot at the end of life.
But it was the same my 3 tears. Yeah, I know. I hear you.
It's like, I want to know.
No. It's not going to change my feeling of what happened. But I'm just.
Because if someone thought, oh, my loved one was crying, that's when I want to be like, probably not.
Yeah, okay.
It was probably biological. But if someone was like, I think that's a message that she loved me, I don't want to go,
no, well,
it's probably biological. You know, I wanted to, but generally speaking, nurses would say, it's probably biological.
So I was going to ask, and maybe you've covered this, but how do you think being a hospice nurse has changed you the most in the way you live your life and your outlook on life? You mentioned before the appreciation, which is beautiful and profound.
Yeah, I mean, I think being a hospice nurse has made me feel like I have a purpose in life. I mean, it's changed my life in like every way. I feel like there were so many years where I didn't like what I was doing. So to like be a human in this world that like likes what they're doing and
making a difference,
truly feels like I like love my job. Now, granted, I don't do it full time. Like I'm not a hospice nurse full time. I never, which is a whole nother podcast. I could go on and on about like how to make nursing work for you and all these things. I don't fully like agree with the whole like 40-hour work week. That's a whole nother thing. So like there's a lot of things I do to like create this life that I want. And I feel grateful that I have a nursing degree, that I have found a type of nursing that I love, and that I work in a state that's like unionized. So I'm in a nursing union, and it just creates this beautiful life for me. So it's changed how I view life. It's changed my work-life balance, even something as like logical or practical as that. And I really do feel grateful. I feel grateful every day. Like I was on another podcast and he was like, yeah, but you can't really keep that up. And I was like, no, I do. I really am someone that does. And not because like I'm so special and just me, because it's like my job has helped me create that kind of life and sobriety and the 12-step, like all these things have helped me create that life. So yeah, it's one of my greatest gifts.
Well, it sounds like you've found your purpose, and I just think you're one of the angels that were sent down to help people understand. No, really, I truly mean that. Tell all of our listeners how they can follow you, get your book, and there's a journal, I believe, right?
Yeah.
What's to tell?
Yeah, so I'm on social media, wherever you get your social media, at Hospice Nurse Julie, and my book is called Nothing to Fear. And my journal is also called Nothing to Fear, just the Nothing to Fear journal. And generally I developed that because a lot of people read my book and were kind of like, is there a place we can start? Like, what more can we do? And that's how the journal was developed. And I love the journal because it starts with like the existential stuff about like, what do you think? What do you fear? Why do you fear it? What has been your experience with death? What are your beliefs? Those kind of things. And then it ends with like the practical stuff,
right.
You know, what to actually do if you want to try to plan, whichever one should, your end of life. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
That was very beautiful and inspiring.
Oh my gosh, you guys, you too. There's nothing better than like two like really emotionally open people. I'm so into it.
I love that. Thank you. Really.
Yeah.
Really inspiring.
So
and I think our listeners you've got this audience that's going to just love everything you say and follow you. And I think it'll be really helpful.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Wonderful meeting you.
You too.